Welcome to Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. Mike Grimm along with Justin Gaard and the head coach of the Golden Gopher football team, PJ Fleck, joins us as well from the complex, coming off of Friday night's loss to Iowa, 35-7. And Coach, let's start there before we look ahead to another Friday game coming up this Friday, 3 and 4 weeks. I know you mentioned to Guardsy in the post-game interview. I think the first thing you said was, we just got outplayed in all phases of the game. So now after you break the film down and talk with the team, and they had to have extra thick leather maybe this weekend. You talk about those leather vests. Kind of take us through what the weekend was like now heading into game week this week.
Yeah, it just wasn't good enough. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching, every aspect, and it all starts with me. I'm responsible for everything that happens on that field, no matter what the circumstances are, and they weren't good enough, period. When you break it down, every single phase can be looked at and be better. And that's what we're going to continue to focus on. So I'm sure we'll peel apart that onion as we keep talking, but it's 100% my responsibility to get it right, get it fixed. But again, there's a lot of things that we're doing that we're making investments not only for now, but also down the road. And that's decisions I make to be able to give us the best chance to win now. And there's things outside of our control, but we've got to do a better job adapting to it. And that's the message to the players, is that we have to be able to be better. I know it sounds really cliche-ish, but we got to be better. And there's a lot of young guys and inexperienced guys playing. I've got to coach them better. I've got to know, I got to make sure they know the demands more and make sure exactly they know what the expectation is when they play. And that's where I've fallen short. And I've got to continue to be better that way.
When we talked post-game, you also mentioned it didn't feel like you, whether it was the penalties or not being able to run the ball, not being able to stop the run. What do you think was missing there, or what do you think has kind of changed where that – because that isn't you, specifically the penalties going back all the way to your first year here. What do you think led to that on Friday?
I think it's always a good thing when something stands out like that. That's not necessarily the norm when things are happening, because we have an identity. I think we've formed our own fingerprint. I think people know what type of style football we play, especially our fans. And when we don't do that, it stands out like a sore thumb. And that was one of those nights for us. And again, that's 100% my responsibility, and I've got to get that fixed. But again, it's some of the penalties are hustle penalties, which I'll take. And whether people agree or disagree with those, that's not what it is. They're penalties, and you've got to be able to respond to that, because there's going to be penalties. We're going to get penalized here and there. We're one of the most least penalized teams in the country, always have been. But when we do have penalties, we got to respond to that. And again, that starts with me.
Did you get any clarification on two things? One, the penalty on you for being on the field with your team, and two, the targeting call that was overturned just before halftime on the Iowa safety, which was called by 3 refs on the field?
Yeah, I think the one on me, us, whenever we were on the field, we were past the numbers. I was standing there just waiting for clarification. They wanted me to be off the field. And I didn't know why I had to be off the field. When I'm standing by my team. And again, I've just got to back them up. I got to get them outside the numbers. And so, again, it's a penalty, and I'll make sure that we're outside the numbers from now on. But again, I'm just with my team getting them ready to go, but I'll make sure we're outside of that. And then the other one, I didn't get much clarification on that at all. But again, I'm all about player safety, and if they feel like that was a safe hit, then it was a safe hit. You're never going to allow penalties. Penalties and the referee should never be able to dictate what happens to you in a game. And I didn't coach our team well enough to be able to have them respond in the way that we needed to be able to do that and offset those.
What do you think is keeping the passing game from evolving a little bit? It was a tough night for Tanner, a couple interceptions. You've been able to run the ball all season long, except for the Iowa game. Passing game has been a little more up and down. What do you think is leading to that?
Just inconsistency. Again, it starts with me, 100%. All the responsibility and accountability comes to me. But when you look at it, Tanner, I thought, put the ball in a lot of places where it needed to be, but it was the details. It was the tiny, tiny details of maybe a route depth or a drop. There were 8 drops in that game. You take that we count as drops. It's not like you sit there and say, okay, well, that's really not a drop, but we'll count it. There are 8 drops in that game, and we got to do a better job coaching. We've got to do a better job of making sure that those minute details of that 1 yard or that one angle needs to be exactly where it needs to be, and we're just a little off on that right now, and that's what I got to be able to clean up.
One of the best things Tanner has is the response mechanism. I mean, I remember the first time I talked to him, he talked about that. This is when he first got in action. I think it was after the Nebraska game, his redshirt freshman year. Because you know he's such a great responder and you know he's always on to the next play, like how do you help him or work through these types of situations where maybe the passing game isn't going as well, he's not playing as well, things aren't as clean as they were a year ago? Like, because you expect he's just going to turn the page and respond, but he's also, still a young kid. So is there anything extra you have to do with him, or is it just business as usual to get him through this?
Well, it's not business as usual. It's just it's growing. It's getting better. It's taking your failings and growing from it. There's a lot of challenges that we're having. Like every team in the country, some have more challenges than others, and you take them head on, and you have those open conversations, and you coach as hard as you can, and you have your players play as hard as you can, and that's what I want to continue to see. And I've said that from day one. It's just how hard we play. The result will be the result. The X and O, that's one thing. I want to see how hard we play. And then when I get involved, it's more of like the effort, the how, the execution. We'll get that with time. But it's the other things that we've got to be able to clean up with the details. But it's just getting better. It's growing. And I know it sounds again boring, but trained behavior is boring habits, and those boring habits become elite instincts. And again, we just haven't been able to put it all together yet. And it's more challenging to do that. But again, I have to find a way to be able to do that, and not only today, but as we keep moving into the future.
You mentioned the cleaning up some of the penalties and some of the drops and those kind of things, and certainly that can be work done. And then you mentioned the effort part. Are you good with the effort and the how part of it with what you're getting from your team right now from that standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of inexperienced guys playing that are doing it for the first time. So they've got to know what the standard is, and they got to know how they look and how they can change their best. And I think that's what we're all learning right now, is we're all growing together. And I think it's okay to have those conversations. It's okay to be able to coach them up. It's okay to be able to point out what we're not doing well. And everybody's got to have their leather vest on and be open to being coached. But again, you look on the defensive side of the ball, and I counted 7, 8 freshmen out there at one possession. And again, they're doing it for the first time. So there's a standard. Are they going to meet that standard as true freshmen or redshirt freshmen right now? Probably not. But they have to know what that looks like, and they have to know that when they do it, here's what it looks like, and when they don't do it, here's what it looks like. So you're constantly teaching and constantly educating as you keep moving forward. But I've never questioned how hard we play. I mean, they're playing really hard, and they're giving everything they possibly have. And again, I have to be better as a head coach.
Well, I'm curious. You've mentioned that a couple times. So I'm going to ask you to simplify it. It's probably not a simple thing, but as you go through and you're looking inward and saying, how do I make this better? What is that process like for you? Are you leaning on mentors? Are you going back to things you've done in the past? Are you trying to find things out individually about each individual person on the team? How does that process work for you when you say, I've got to be better and figure out a way to get through maybe what the standard needs to be? Yeah,
I think it's exactly what you said. But I think if we have this standard that you have to win 11 games every single year, and you're not real with what roster you have and what who's playing and who's out, and the challenges that are affecting everyone somehow, some way. I said before, if you have a really experienced team, you got probably a better shot to be able to get through 2020 a little better than most. If you're inexperienced, you're dealing with all the challenges and all the uncertainty of 2020 plus inexperienced players and still holding that to a standard. So it's a little bit more individualized. It's a little bit more being realer, with your team than maybe guys would be able to understand exactly what you meant. You didn't have the off season to go back through the culture and the program and have all those meetings. You did, but it was virtual. And so it's constantly making sure that the standard is looked at, standard is held accountable in every aspect. And maybe, with a Carter Coughlin, you knew exactly what you were going to get out of them. Well, if you have some other players that are playing for the first time, there might be some inconsistency, but you're finding out what that person can and cannot do. And then I have to do a better job of putting them in positions to do the things they can do right now, not what they're going to be able to do next year or the year after, but maybe right now. And that's part of the offense, defense, and special teams game plans of simplifying things and letting our players be able to play fast. So I have a lot that I have to get better at, and I have a lot that I can be able to help this football team with as we continue to go through the year.
You mentioned Carter Coughlin. I bring him up only because I remember of all the guys, he's the guy that always would bring up the leather vest day. And I think even one point said that's his favorite day because he wants to know how he's going to get better. And you've mentioned leather vest, and we mentioned leather vest. And there might be some listeners and viewers that are saying, the heck is he talking about leather vest? Can you kind of take us through who came up with the idea and what it really means? That guys do need to be coached, and sometimes, they may have to hear some criticism.
Well, I hope that every team meeting that we have, after a game, whether you can't really tell whether we win or lose. Now, when we win, we go through this kind of player of the week and stuff like that. But right after that, it goes right into the critiquing of how we can grow. The circumstance won't dictate necessarily our behavior, right? And so we're not going to let the win make us feel a certain way or the loss make us feel a certain way. It is what it is, right? And there's a standard to how we play, no matter what year anybody is or how much experience they have. And so it's constant education, right? Constant education. And, there's a lot of inexperienced guys who are getting coached for the first time and being able to handle that and know how to be able to internalize that and not take those things personal and just be able to know that the actions being coached, not you as a person, but the actions getting coached. So that's kind of what we mean by the leather vest is that, we need to get better. Whether we win or lose, we're going to get better. And here's the things we're good at. And then here's the things we need to get better at. And as human beings, we have a hard time really at times, right? Until we get older to hear criticism. And like Carter Coughlin said, that was his favorite day of the week. It probably wasn't his favorite day of the week when he was a sophomore and he wasn't playing very well. So it's being able to, that's why we talk about the leather vest, put it on, zip it up, and let's all be ready to get better together and look at ourselves of what maybe we're not doing right. We all like to look at what we're doing right and say, okay, good job, me. But when, as coaches, you're doing everything you can to fix the bad or the non-examples and make them examples, and you're always going to constantly find ways to make things better. And as human beings, we always want it just to be good enough. Is it finally good enough? It probably will never be good enough because you're always going to find something you can do better. And if you're not on your way to be a champion.
All right, let's take our first break. Thank you. And we'll tell you about Onward for Business quickly. It's presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors. They want to be on your team when you buy or sell a business. Onward for Business is the one-stop shop for buying or selling your business and for payroll, insurance, bookkeeping, and more. Onward. Sunbelt Business Advisors, a proud sponsor of Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. We'll have more. Stay with us. It is Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back to Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. Mike Grimm and Justin Gaard with you here on the Gopher Radio Network. Another Friday night game coming up. It's Minnesota and Purdue. That one kicking off at 6:30 at TCF Bank Stadium. We'll take air at 4:30 here locally and across the great state of Minnesota for that one. And we'll preview the Boilermakers and the Golden Gophers here coming up. But first, we'll continue to, as PJ Fleck said, we'll unpeel that onion just a little bit more with that Iowa game. As I think, Coach, if I would have told you heading into the fourth quarter that maybe you had allowed only 20 points, you might in the pregame have said, yeah, I think that's fine. We'll do that and we'll take our chances. Am I correct in thinking maybe for the first three quarters you were okay with, where your defense was and some of the plays they were making and keeping points off the board?
Yeah, like I said, we got a lot of guys that are playing really hard on defense. Do they have the experience? Do they have the built-up years? Do they have the built-up years in the weight room yet? No, but that's where we're at. I mean, I'm proud of our guys of how hard they're playing on the defensive side of the ball. We got to clean up some plays with that, but for the most part, we got a lot of youthful guys that are playing their tail ends off. And when you look at offense, we had 2 10-minute drives with no points. I think, we're going into the fourth quarter, it's 14-0. Within 8 plays on defense, it's 35-0. Mm-hmm. So again, you got to look at why that happened and evaluate that. And that's the hard part when you evaluate that is because we got to go back down to effort and how and scheme and what was it? Because it after that, 14-0, we're going in to score a touchdown after a 10-minute drive, and we throw an interception, and then it all changed. And that's what row the boat's all about. You got to get your oar back in the water and just go after that. And, we're not going to sit there and ever say like, oh, well, if I would have thought we had been down by 14, would I have allowed that and accepted that? Every game's its own entity, and I have high expectations of our players, of our staff, of our program, no matter what year it is. And we just got to keep growing. And this is a game we can learn from. These are all games we're going to learn from. And, anybody out there, that's watching our games and understanding what we're doing and understanding how we're doing it. I'm not saying you have to like it because I don't like to lose like anyone else, but I think you can start to see how talented our players are. They're just on the defensive side, a little inexperienced, and we're a little too inconsistent right now on offense. And just like everybody could have used a lot. That nobody really got, and we just have come up on the short end of the stick a few times.
Yeah, and just to quickly, I wasn't suggesting it was okay to be down 20-zip. I was suggesting that maybe allowing 20 points going into the fourth quarter against that team would have been okay, thinking that your offense might have had 28 or something at that point. So that was my point. Obviously, being down 20-zip's no good going into the fourth. But
I understand that. I understand that, Grimmy. I understand that. I just, like, for me, it's, I think you can, nobody should ever score on you, and then you should score a ton of points. In your mind, when you game plan, it's like the perfect game plan, right? All right, we're going to shut them out. We're going to score 100 points and things are going to be good, but you also know how you're going to be able to have to adjust that. And now, if you would have told me we would have had 2 10-minute drives with no points, I don't know if I would have believed you. And what I would like is to be able to hold people to not many points scoring. So I think, I kind of agree with what you said. But when you look at it, you got to look at it from all angles. We miss a field goal and there's just a lot of things that are happening that we've got to get better.
What's difficult about defending specifically maybe that stretch run play that Iowa likes to do? As long as I've been watching Iowa football, and even my 10 years being on the sidelines, I've seen that play over and over and over again. It's something they do so well. What are the difficulties in defending that that you ran into on Friday?
Well, I think you could even say how is it hard to defend our run game, right? It's the same thing. You're going to be good at what you do, right? And they're good, they're big, they're physical up front. Again, there's no excuses whatsoever, but there's not a lot of people who are playing a lot of freshman defensive tackles and defensive linemen like we are. And they're playing really hard and playing really well and giving everything they have. And there were some good plays and then there's some bad plays. You get one. The thing about it is if you're running the stretch and one guy gets reached, that's a gap. And then they're really good at pressing the hips and they're really good at stretching it out and they're really patient runners and they're going to make you pay if one guy's out of place. And I've got to do a better job of making sure that we can be able to not only be in our gap but dominate our gap. And we have to know the standard of how to be able to do that. But you're not going to be able to know how to do that until you go play and then go fail and play and fail and play and fail. But they're very talented. We have a very talented defense. But I've said this from day one. This isn't like something I didn't say. I said in January. We're going to be way more inexperienced on defense. We might have more talent over there than we've had in the past. It's just going to be really youthful talent. And I think everybody can see that. And I hope you see that because I do.
Well, you mentioned that you obviously lost for the targeting call your middle linebacker, Mariano Marin. So then all of a sudden you've got Willis, you've got Gordon, you've got Lindenberg, you've got some young guys, and even, frankly, Mariano Marin's young. It's still at this point in terms of number of starts and all of that stuff. But you see from those young guys, his use of the situation.
Yeah, and listen, this is our radio show, and everybody's going to critique it. There are no excuses. Nobody cares. They look at the final score. Did you win? Did you lose? And why didn't we win? But I'm the one in charge of the program, and I get to be able to develop it how we want to develop it. And sometimes there's, when you put a lot of attention when you get here and you recruit the way we do with high school players, and you're bringing them in and developing them. A lot of these guys are redshirt freshmen. Some are true freshmen. Right. And they're getting a chance to play and they're going to be able to play for a lot of different reasons. We got some, at every level, whether it's Keontae Shad out, whether it's, Braylon Oliver out, then Mariano out in the game. And then on the back end, Ben St. Just out, there's only so much depth that you have, especially when you're going to be a youthful team. Then you play more youthful players. Doesn't mean you can't win. Doesn't mean you shouldn't win. But you have to be able to know that there's going to be mistakes made. You got to limit them to non-catastrophic mistakes. But when you looked at one point, you don't have any experienced linebackers on the field. And they're all freshmen. And you even said they're young. They're all freshmen, either redshirt freshmen or true freshmen. And then up front, I think D'Angelo Carter is going to be a great player here. Rashad Cheney is going to be a great player here, right? Boye is going to be a great player here. MJ Anderson is going to be a great player here, right? Biggest says he's getting better, right? And you're seeing it's just nobody cares about, nobody wants time, and nobody has time for time, but that's what it's going to take. And some point, these guys are going to be really, really good. And sometimes you got to be able to take your lumps in a year like this. And it's up to this point. Not saying we have to continue to do that. It's just we are who we are, exactly where we are right now. And this is what we have to be able to get better at.
Quick 3-part question here. We saw Michael Dixon get some action for the first time. What was your thought on that? Phillip Howard got his first start on defense, filling in for St. Just. And what is St. Just, the latest on him? Thanks, Guardsy. We're learning to count here to
helping
3.
out.
Yeah, we'll see on Ben St. Just. Again, I don't make those decisions, especially when it comes down to health and safety and all that. I don't make any of those decisions. When you talk about Phillip Howard, yeah, I thought Phillip Howard went in there and got some first playing time at corner and switching over from wide out to corner. And I thought he, held his own, and he's going to continue to get better as he goes forward. And then what was your first one?
Michael Dixon. How'd you think he did in his first?
Yeah, I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. Or a true freshman. I mean, he's sometimes I can't remember if they're a freshman or redshirt freshman or a true freshman. There's so many of them, but he's going to be a really good player, everybody, like a really special player. And what people have to realize is so many people are saying, well, there's two sides of this. One, and this is human nature. This season counts. This season doesn't count. It doesn't count. It does count. It counts. I mean, it counts. But there's certain things we're going to have to do to not only help this year, it's also going to help us in the long run. Look at Northwestern last year. I mean, they won one game in conference, and now they're 4-0 in the Big Ten, and they have 7-8 starters on defense that are seniors. It's harder when you have a really inexperienced team. I just have to do a better job coaching, and I'm not doing that right now.
Tell us a little bit about D'Angelo Carter. I wanted to get to him. You just brought him up. We all kind of got introduced to him with the interception in Maryland, where he then rumbled down the field with a good return there. 6'2", 310. He's from Georgia. Tell us a little bit about him, because we're just kind of getting to know him.
I think he's going to be a really special player here. He can play nose. He can play 3 technique. He's only a redshirt freshman. He's strong. He's a lot longer than actually how tall he is, but he plays with incredible effort and pad level and leverage. Amazing kid from Lee County down there in Georgia. And you talk about a young man with an unbelievable story. He's only going to continue to get better as he goes forward. He's going to continue to learn how to be able to take that coaching and continue to apply it. But he's going to be a very special player one day. And he's developing into a really amazing young man, too. Goes to the elementary schools, reads to people, and does a lot of things virtually. I'm really proud of him. He's going to keep getting better. He just needs to play more. And that's what we're doing. We're playing him.
All right, let's take another break here. We'll come back. We'll look ahead to Friday. Purdue comes to town. It's another Friday night game, and we'll have more on Gopher Football Weekly. It is presented by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota, the #1 health plan for Medicare in the state. Stay with us. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. It's our third segment of Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, sponsored by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota, the #1 health plan for Medicare in the state. Grimm and Guardsy with you, and the head coach PJ Fleck with us as well. And Coach, let's look ahead to this Friday night game. 3 Friday games. This is the third of the season over a 4-week stretch. I guess in this week you could say that maybe you've got an advantage. You catch your breath. Purdue plays a Saturday night game. They have to travel on Thursday. Maybe you catch a bit of a break there, and maybe you're used to it. I don't know, but this has been such a weird year. I mean, no week has been normal. What you have, even the normal week, there was election day, and you didn't practice on your usual Tuesday. And this isn't an excuse making. Everyone goes through it, but I'm just saying this has been an unbelievable year for every football team in the country to go through.
Yeah, but the only football team I care about is our football team. And so, we've got our own challenges, and those are the challenges that I'm focused on. But again, just as I said in year one, my vision is always for now, but it's always for how we can continue to make this consistent over a long period of time as well. And I'm never going to compromise that. And, we won 11 games last year, and everybody keeps talking about that. I've talked about Kirk Ferentz and Barry Alvarez combined. I think they won 8, 10-plus win seasons in a 40-year career or something. We had won 11 games in 125 years, okay? And we're going to get back to that. And we could have won 11 games anyway this year, right? I mean, you couldn't do it with the shortened schedule. So, but there are certain decisions you have to be able to make. Not because you're pushing something off till next year, because you're forced into making that decision for this year. And especially with things that are so far out of your control. And some people, like I said, are affected more than others. But that's the challenge we all have. There's reasons for everything that's happening in college football right now. Nobody wants to hear them. Everybody's going to think they're excuses. But as a head coach, you've got to be able to find the reason. And then you have to be able to confront the reason, whatever that reason is, and then make it better. Right? And it doesn't mean it's going to be fixed overnight. It just means it's got to continue to get better. And that's what we're going to continue to do. But Friday night, play Purdue. Excited about another opportunity to go play and watch our guys compete and get better. Purdue's a really good football team. They're 2-1 right now. They've got some big wins. Lost a close one with Northwestern last week, which was a really tight game. Northwestern's got a really good defense, really experienced defense, but they're Purdue. I mean, typical Jeff Brom offense. They open it up. They got really good receivers. I think probably the best core of receivers, top to bottom, probably in the league. And when you look at what they've been able to do, a quarterback's very accurate. He can get out of the pocket. He can escape. He's getting protected well. Their wideouts go up and make plays. And then defensively, I think they're better. They got everybody back from what they had last year, and they're talented. I think Diaco's done a really good job of implementing a little bit more 3-4 and 4-3, and he combines them both, which I think creates some issues for offenses. And I think they played really good defense. And then special teams, they've got really dangerous returners. So they're a really good football team. We've got to get better this week in practice and be ready for the opportunity.
When you talk about Jeff Brom's offense, you mentioned all the different things that they like to do. What's important when you're preparing for it to know that they've got a couple of receivers, they've got a running back who's probably going to want to make some catches. They're going to make you go side to side. Like when you focus in on the keys defensively, take us through those a little bit and what makes that offense difficult? Yeah,
the keys are you got to defend the whole field. They make you defend from sideline to sideline, from back to front. I mean, they make sure that you cover every single piece of the field. And they got athletes in space. You've got to tackle in space. You got to be able to rally to the football, and you got to find a way to create takeaways. I mean, I think they threw it 50 some times last week. I mean, they're going to throw the football. They're going to run the football. They're going to find ways to be able to run the football by throwing it, and short completions and catch and run. But they have everything, and they do a really good job of running it.
They have a guy who reminds me of an old Purdue running back, Mike Allstott, who is a hard guy to tackle. I think originally was a walk-on linebacker, and all of a sudden they said, hey, he's fast. Let's see if we have they had a bunch of injuries, and all of a sudden he's now, I think he's put 2 or 3 100-yard rushing games in. What's the challenge of tackling a big guy like that?
Well, you've got to be able to make sure that you shrink the holes that he runs through, right? Big guys, if you smaller holes, harder time fitting through there. But when he has a lane and it's big, he gets that head of steam going, and he drives his knees really well, lowers his pads, got a good center of gravity, and really delivers blows to defenders. So we've got to be able to swarm tackle. We got to get around him when they run the football. We've got to do a really good job up front and find a way to, one, stop the run, then get pressure on the quarterback.
You mentioned their return guys. Iowa has an electric return guy. Charlie Jones has been good all year. You pretty much negated his presence, however you did it. What was the plan to kind of kick away from him and not let him hurt you? And is that something that'll probably carry over with these guys?
Yeah, I think, being able to, have an Australian-style kicker create some challenges. You're not, it's his first year punting. And so he's doing a really good job of making sure, Mark Crawford's doing a really good job of making sure that he's placing the ball where it needs to be. And then that's one of the strengths of having him here is he's really good at placement. Now we got to get better at the distance of our kicks and the hang time of our kicks and things like that. But that'll come with time. Again, he's 26 years old, but he's a first-time punter and a freshman. So again, more inexperienced, but we're always going to be able to do that. I think our punt team and Rob Wanger do a really good job of being able to help our team be able to cover the best they possibly can, protect, then get out in coverage. We got a lot of guys that can run. So I think that's been helping.
What's the key to getting more out of your return games, whether it's kickoff, whether it's punt? Obviously, they put you in some short fields this last week with some mistakes there. What's the key to improving that?
Yeah, I thought we made 2 critical errors in the return game. And, and I think that hurts. We had starting drives -5, -12, -11, and -5. And against Iowa, I mean, your chances of going down to score are like 5%. Inside your own 5. I think it's somewhere like 5-6% of you actually going in to score. And we had 2 times that we drove 95 yards and didn't get any, or had a chance getting inside the red zone of driving that far. And that's why it's a 5 or 6% chance. But we've got to be able to understand and coach better and be able to make sure that those, Cam Wiley's just doing everything he can to make a play, and the ball's a program, and it kind of got short on him into the wind, and that comes with experience, and he'll know that next time. And the wind alignment and call, always making sure that you have that. But again, I've got to do a better job coaching him to make sure he does that. And then same thing on the back end of the toes at the 10, never go behind that. And Phillip drifted, and that's a new returner. And you're going to have to either touch the stove by doing it the right way or the wrong way, and the easy way or the hard way. And again, I obviously haven't done a good enough job coaching.
And maybe on that one, the punt spins back anyway, so you might start deep as it stands. But it is, I know he didn't follow the process like you want him to, that's for sure. Rondell Moore has, obviously a returning All-American, has not played yet. How do you go about this week planning for that? Is he in? Is he out? Do you know? How do you go about that?
Yeah, nobody knows. He's a fantastic player, a fantastic playmaker, incredibly explosive. One of the best players in college football. You always prepare like he's going to play. We'll prepare like he is going to play. But they got a lot of weapons, and and they've done a really good job there because he's not just their only weapon. David Bell is a fantastic football player. Number 0 is a really good football player. I can go on and on about all their wideouts. So I think it just makes it that much more difficult if he plays. But if he doesn't play, it's still difficult because they've got a ton of playmakers on the outside.
All right, let's take a break. We'll have our final segment looking ahead to Minnesota and Purdue. Starts at 6:30 on Friday. 4:30 will be our airtime. By the way, if you missed any portion of today's show, you can always catch it on demand via our Golden Gopher podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back to Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, our final segment with the head coach, Mike Grimm and Justin Gaard with you. Remind you again, it's a Friday night game this week, 6:30. We take air at 4:30 on the Gopher Radio Network. Coach, I want to ask you a question just going back to last week and then briefly kind of last year. We had talked last year in a couple of games where you had the lead. You didn't put maybe substitutions in late, and I remember you telling us on a show that, you and Kirk Shiraka would have that conversation, and you were always, maybe one point in your career, somebody came back on you, you decided you didn't want to do that. Now I'm going to flip it when you're down and maybe the game's out of hand. What is your philosophy in terms of, hey, I'm going to put in some of these guys to get some experience at some point, whether it even be a backup quarterback, somebody behind Muhammad Ibrahim who had, had some carries there?
Well, you play 60 minutes of football and then you make decisions accordingly. We didn't have an off season, and there's a lot of times where there's a lot of guys out there, especially defensively, need reps, period. And we're going to make sure they get experience. For inexperience, the best way to trump that is making sure you get experience. And on offense, if things aren't going right, best way to do it is be able to keep playing and fix it. And that was my decision. And that's what I feel like we have to do, as all the things you said of why isn't this and why isn't that? Well, we got to keep practicing. We got to keep working. We got to keep rowing the boat. That's what rowing the boat's all about. And, there's times to be able to do that, and there's times not to be able to do that. And I didn't feel that was necessary because we needed to be able to finish. We didn't finish drives, and we needed to finish something and finish the game, finish a drive. And we need that extra practice in a game because there's a lot of people can say how experienced we are. We are at some positions, not most of them. And we need to be able to gain that experience.
As you went back and looked at the running game this last week, it was the first time that you haven't been able to run the ball super consistently. We talked about Iowa's front. They've obviously got a really experienced front there. But what was missing from the running game on Friday that you can hope to correct here moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily what was missing from the running. I thought we ran it pretty well. I think it was we got behind the chains so quick at times where we didn't complete a pass or a ball was dropped, and now all of a sudden you're in a 2nd and 10, right. Or now you're in a 3rd and 8, or you're making decisions that you're never ahead of the chains. All right. And we're good when we're balanced and we can be ahead of the chains and make those decisions and keep the chains moving. And we weren't able to do that. So I thought we ran the ball effectively, maybe not as good as we did, but that's a credit to Iowa. They have a really good defense, really good front seven. But I wouldn't sit there and say that it was bad either. I would say that we got ourselves in some bad positions and situations where, especially being down 14, that we had to be able to change some things. And you look at those 2 10-play drives. I mean, we're mixing it up and executing. Yeah. And when we didn't execute, we fell behind the chain, and it was hard to get balanced again. So it's a combination of a lot of things, JG. And again, I got to fix them all. I mean, we know what they are, and we got to fix them.
And at the end of the night, Ibrahim had 144, so it wasn't like he was totally stuffed with 20. 144 is a pretty good day against the number 1 ranked rushing defense in the Big Ten, I would say. And I think this is twice now in games where you've fallen behind, where you've been able to stay patient. Like Maryland, you basically were down 21-7 and scored 31 straight points, basically handing the ball off. So I think there's sometimes people, you got to throw if you're behind. But I think you've proven here that, in that third quarter, that 10-minute plus drive, there weren't a lot of throws there. That was, a lot on the ground. You're down 14-0. You don't panic. Kind of talk about strategically, even if you're a run-first team, there are times where you can stay with the run and not get away from that.
Yeah, well, I think, Grimmy, it's a combination. It's being able to execute when you do throw, and that's when we didn't do. We did that at Maryland. We were able to complete passes when we were able to do that to stay ahead of the chains, and we didn't do that against Iowa. So it made it feel like you're passing more, getting into those because you're playing behind the chains where you are mixing it up a little bit. And running the football is always it has to be effective for us to be successful. We know that. That's what we're built on. And when you're having some success doing that, we've had holding call. We have a penalty. Something would get us behind the chain and further back. And then, you're not, 1st and 20 and, it's inside zone's not exactly the first call to get maybe, half back. So, but again, it's how the game flows and how we're playing on defense. And how are we, where's the field position? And what does it look like with the clock? So there's all those things that come into play when you're making those types of decisions, and I got to be better.
Did I see Trey Potts in uniform on Saturday, and can I take that as a sign that he'll be back sooner rather than later?
He was in uniform, and again, like I said, I don't make those decisions. That's all based on the medical staff and the medical team who do a great job. But he's such a fantastic player and a person, and just unfortunate that he missed last week.
And what's the key to, obviously he was emerging as a backup there for Mo. Keeping him engaged is probably the wrong term, but I imagine sometimes when people get injured, there's kind of that letdown of, man, I was just starting to hit my stride here. How do I keep that? I know you don't believe in momentum, but that momentum going in terms of his development.
Yeah, you row the boat, man. Put your oar back in the water and go. I mean, so many people are like, this is what row the boat's all about. Row the boat's really fun when you win 11 games. When you're 1-3, row the boat. That's what it's for. Anybody can row in calm seas. Nobody said that. With the you're going down the river and you're downstream and it's great. But when you're getting in those rocky waters, it's hard. But that's what I mean. Trey's learning how to deal with that right now. Right. And there's so many young players dealing with, how do I deal with this emotion? How do I deal with losing? How do I deal with maybe not playing my best? How do I deal with the standard? How do I deal with, virtual class? How do I deal with, and this is their first, some of them, their first year. And now, Trey Potts having an impact as a redshirt freshman. Again, another redshirt freshman. But you can see, here's what I want to make sure. Call me positive Paulie, call me whatever you want. Like, you can see the talent. It's just going to take some time to piece it all together. And it's unfortunate that it's in this year. And there's teams that are hit harder because of that, because you needed that development. You truly needed it. You couldn't get by without it. And we're piecing that together. But Trey is one of those guys who's learning how to deal with, being out. And he's doing a great job I guess you could say he's doing a great job of being out, because he's handling it really well, because he's got a great leader in front of him, Mohamed Ibrahim, to teach him how to do that. who was on the scout team his entire first year and got banged up his entire year and fought through it. And, so he's got great leadership ahead of him too. And that room is so close.
Well, very good. Friday night game. I know when Purdue was here a couple of years ago, it was a cold weather, and you hit him pretty well in that game. And I was watching the Northwestern Purdue game this past Saturday, and the announcers mentioned that Jeff Brom had talked about the fact they haven't been a good cold weather team, and that they were putting an emphasis on it, knowing it'd be cold in Chicago as it was last week, and knowing it'd be cold in Minnesota. And I know you guys obviously have embraced that, so it should be an interesting ball game weather-wise as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think last week it rained in West Lafayette, and they threw for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards. So, that shouldn't affect anything. I mean, we knew what kind of season it's going to be when you're playing in late November, even into December in the Midwest. And that's what makes it really fun.
All right, very good. We'll see you Friday night at the stadium.
Look forward to it, everybody. Thanks a lot. Row the boat, Sky Ma. Go Gophers. Thank you.
All right, very good. Georgie, we'll see you as well on that first row of the booth.
I'll be there. Thanks, man.
All right, sounds good. That's our show. Thanks for listening. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College.